All right, another book review. This book is called Parentology, Everything You Wanted to Know About the Science of Raising Children But Were Too Exhausted to Ask by Dalton Conley. Dalton Conley is, I believe, a professor. I know he's a professor of, I don't know, something at NYU right now. And he's been in, PhD, I guess, or at least teaching in colleges for most of his career. I guess that is his career, and he's an author as well. So he lived in New York, in Manhattan mostly, and had two kids. And I guess maybe he's a statistician. I think he's a statistician. It's tough to remember all the things. I'm flipping through these books real fast. But he was very interested in the small things he could do to, well, he was very interested in accelerating his kids' education, and he was very concerned with them having, a massive future outcome. And he actually named his kids, and this is one of the things he's well known for. He named his daughter E, the letter E. I know it sounds like straight out of Seinfeld. And he named his son Yo, like Y-O. That was his son's name. And he did this because, I don't know, he read somewhere that giving his kids a weird name helped them become more independent and more successful and leaders and all. I mean, he did weird things like this, but he did a lot of actually, really good things with his kids. And the primary thing was he read to them constantly. Well, he was very intentional with everything he did with them. He was thought out. It was researched. He's looking at statistics, and I think it's part of his job. And so he raised them very, very deliberately, very intentionally, like I did, but he did it a little bit differently. One thing he did, which is amazing, is he read to his kids constantly, 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 and their reading comprehension skills were testing, off the charts at a young age. That's reading comprehension. That's not reading. That means they could understand when they were being read to, and he read famous classical works of literature to them, Mark Twain and stuff, and it was great. And they even did some co-sleeping. He was really tight with his kids. I think they did co-sleeping because they lived in a tiny apartment in Manhattan, so it might have been incidental to the cost of living where they were. But there's one really massive thing in this book because he did have problems with his son, and he ended up medicating his son for ADD or ADHD, whatever, very, very reluctantly. And his wife was against it. He was against it. They fought it tooth and nail. But his son was having issues of attention. He was had some social issues. He was just like a little bit of a loose cannon. Even though he was brilliant in many, many ways, he wasn't fitting in school. He was that round peg that they were trying to, or that square peg they were trying to pound into a round hole. And they tried private school, which came at great, great expense in New York, and there were still problems. And of course, then they get the calls from the teacher, we want to medicate your kids. And he tried all these crazy things. Like he tried giving this kid a placebo. So his kid would think he's being medicated, and the school would think he's being medicated, and that didn't work. And then they basically succumbed. He and his wife succumbed. And it was really sad to hear them succumb. And Dalton didn't know what his problem was. He didn't know what it was. Well, one, the problem is fundamental. Some kids are just not wired to sit and be coerced to do things all day. But the other thing was he let his kid play video games. And it's in here, and I see it right away. But the video games mess with his handwriting, mess with his fine motor skills, mess with his kid's self-control. It took his brain into another galaxy, and yeah, that's what the hyperarousal of video games does to kids. So it doesn't matter whether your child has dysgraphia, dyslexia, ADD, or whatever. If you add video games into the mix, it makes everything worse. It doesn't matter if you have social problems, whatever it is, video games make it worse. And so they accentuate and amplify the problems to the point where the only solution that they can come up with, and they tried everything. I mean, they really did. I really admire what Dalton did with his kids, especially with his son, and I respect the battle. But his kid was playing World of Warcraft, and that was the problem. All right, but he doesn't see it. That's my own editorial on the book. I think it's a great, fun book to read. I definitely learned some things in here. Whenever I read these books, there's always stuff to take away, and this book was no exception. And Dalton's such a good writer, and he's funny, that the book moves. So this is definitely a book I recommend reading as well. Not as a Bible, not as a manual on what to do, but for some of the ideas, yeah, you want to be as intentional with your kids as he was. They're that important, and the payoff is that big. All right, thanks for listening.